All right, so I got here the Ridgid sliding miter saw, and over here I've got the Bauer sliding miter saw. But is this a Ridgid and a Bauer? Well, I've actually talked to Ridgid and Delta both, and they've said that this is a Delta Cruiser made in the same factory with mostly the same parts. This one here, I've made a few phone calls, and I can't get somebody to definitively say, but if you look at the base of this saw, at the way the miter is, even the octagon holes in the back of the base here, this is one of the only miter saws I've seen with a motor that's mounted at a 45-degree angle. Every part, every handle, this is a Jet JMS 10X. So I 100% believe that this is built by Jet. Now, I looked up, and Jet had a few negative comments on this saw. One was about the fence, saying that the fence was short on it, and they had a laser. So this saw, all the handles and all the controls are exactly the same as the Jet, and except for when you flip the switch, this has a shadow line instead of a laser, which is a great upgrade. And then I'm going to bring you in close. So if you see the surface right here, how smooth and polished, this is high quality polish. And then I don't know if you can really see it on camera, but these wings have a, where the machine that went and machined these out was making a very fast pass, and it left like a texture to it. So it looks to me like this fence is not the same fence that's on the Jet saw, which was a short fence. So I believe that Harbor Freight has went to Jet and had them make this saw for them, or have bought the basis from them with all the features and the motor and everything. And then they have upgraded to a shadow line, and then upgraded the fence to a taller fence. I get comments all the time on my videos I've made on this Bauer saw about it. Oh, there's too much plastic. This is a hobby level saw. So we're going to put it up against one of the better saws. This is the Delta Cruiser. It's not even your average sliding miter saw. This is a 10-inch model, and this is also the 10-inch model, and we're going to see just how they compare. On the Ridgid Delta, you have this is your safety, and then this is your trigger. You can come in here with your right hand, which is mainly, or your left hand, and can operate both of them. This is your switch for your shadow line. It works fantastic, and I really like this feature. The Bauer Jet has the same switch up here for the shadow line. It doesn't have the dust protector like the Ridgid Delta does. It has a safety over here on the thumb, so you have to push out with your thumb and grab your trigger. So that's fine if you're right-handed, but if you're left-handed, you can't reach the thumb. So this really, you could try coming out here with your pinky if your hands are big enough, but really if you're left-handed, you can't use this saw. So everybody loves this saw because of the slide action. You don't hear it, it's exactly quiet, silent, but when you're running the saw, you don't hear it anyways. The Bauer has a different type of bearing. It's not that it's a bad bearing, it's just these bearings are metal on metal, whereas this is a sealed bearing, and you hear it, and you can kind of feel that metal on metal of the balls rolling on the tubes. Not necessarily a bad thing. They're both super easy to operate. I wouldn't say that there's any difference in the amount of force that you have to use. The only difference is, as you see with the Jet Bauer, this pipe comes out, so you lose 12 inches. And so this saw has to be at least 12 inches away from the wall in order to be able to slide all the way back up. On the Jet Bauer saws, you have this nice machine surface here. It actually slides out. It got a pretty solid stop. You can use this as a stop block when you're cutting repeated cuts, and this works fantastic. I use it all the time. The Delta Ridgid has just this piece of pipe, which actually comes about halfway of the fence, so you only have about 2-3 inches of the pipe here that can catch on your wood. It's the same as the old Chicago Electric. I really don't understand why they use such a poor design on this nice of a saw. Where Delta, said that the 10-inch was the longest cut in its class, I placed a board on here and I was able to cut 12.5 inches through the board. I placed the same board on this saw and I was able to cut 13 inches. So when you do the extended fence, this will cut 16 inches. This one doesn't say that it will do that in the paperwork, but when you take the fence off, it has these the fold up stops, just like the Delta does, to stop. And then this is a little shorter, so you only have to have a 1-inch. And if you use a 1-inch board so you can use a stop, you then get 15.5 inches of extended reach with this one. So without this extra on here, this one will cut a 1/2 inch more than this one. And then if you add the extended fence on, which is something I don't think most people will do very often, then this one can cut a 1/2 inch bigger material. Okay, so let's talk bevels. The Ridgid saw has 7 detents. The jet saw, Bauer, we only have a 45 on either side and a 90. I've been using this saw for 1.5 years and they've all been dead on for me and they work great. This one here has detent, so you actually get the 22.5 and the 39 or 33.9 on either left and right. So it gives you an extra 4 detents if you do those type of miters. This will actually come in very much more beneficial. However, when you bevel this all the way over to the left, which is where you can have your greatest capacity, this saw can only cut 1 5/8 inch thick of a board, because when you come out, the articulating arms will hit the material and push it away from the fence. This particular saw here can do 1 1/8 inch, so it can basically do about a 1/2 inch thicker board on a 45-degree miter to the left. Both of them, when you go to miter to or bevel to the right, on this one you have the motor over here that hits. Over this one you have the belt housing that hits. So you definitely even reduce the amount of capacity you have when you're trying to bevel to the right. In my experience, both of these saws have been tremendously accurate. This one here, I get comments on about hobby level, too much plastic. I don't know what people are talking about. They haven't obviously used the saw, because I have had this thing for probably 1.5 years, have not treated it gently, and it is still dead on. Whenever I go to cut a board, I can check it and it is exactly 90 degrees, 90.0. I use a digital protractor. I put it on my angles. It becomes, dead on. The saw also accurate. They're both great saws. This one, to me, in your everyday cutting, actually has more capacity than this one. This one has the benefit of being able to be pushed all the way up against the wall. So for me, I like this one because it can go up to the wall, because this is an extremely long saw. So if you have plenty of space, this is in my opinion, better cutting saw. It gives you more capacity, more features, whereas this one doesn't have as many features, but it can sit flush up against the wall and it's cool looking. It's got the articulating arms, so all your buddies come by and say, wow, that's a cool saw. So cool factor, this one definitely wins. Up against the wall, it definitely wins. As far as cutting ability, I say the Bauer jet saw definitely takes the cake on this one.